Peggy, is the cost of our alliance with Israel, our special relationship with Israel, is that cost too high?
I think there is a cost. You know, I think it puts us at odds sometimes with the world and the feeling of the world. I'll tell you, I've been watching what's happening in Gaza, and this is just my overall view. We have been watching this fight all of our lives. It would be wonderful if we saw something new, as in peace. I don't just mean go like this and peace happens, but I think we have to get bloodlust down everywhere and try to help them get to the peace that will make them stable, allow them to live, and allow the rest of the world to be more stable and live. I've been watching these explosions all of my life.
Tavis, same question. Do you think U.S. foreign policy is too slanted toward the Israelis?
I would agree with Mr. House in the sense that we do have a special relationship, and that relationship...
Should we have a special relationship?
I think we should. I think it's good for us. I think it's strategic. I think, though, that we have lost the courage. We've lost the conviction. We have lost the commitment to say the hard things that need to be said to our Israeli brothers and sisters. And I agree with Peggy Noonan as well. If I can put it this way, that we have to see the world as it is, not as we want it to be when it comes to foreign policy, and specifically in this particular crisis. And that's, we're being myopic, at least the Bush administration has been, I think, about this, wanting to see the world the way they want it rather than the way it really is.
That actually is a good follow-up question. Has the Bush administration been too one-sided in its dealings with Israel and the Palestinian territories?
Mainly it's been too inactive. The Bush administration essentially parked the Middle East for 7 years, but the Middle East doesn't park itself. If it's not moving forward, it's moving backwards. It's the old bicycle metaphor. And by the time they got involved, it was too late. And it goes back to the conversation we've been having. You're not doing Israel any favors by allowing things to drift. If Israel, again, is going to remain a secure Jewish state, it needs progress diplomatically. What's going on now is not only bad for Palestinians, it's not good for Israelis. The Israeli economy is suffering, Israelis are dying, the quality of life is deteriorating.
And we've also talked about Israeli fatigue, a lot of guilt. Whether they think they're justified to go in or not, they see the pictures every day, and the fatigue is really growing.
You know, and the danger for Israel is for the early part of Israel's history, it could cut deals with Egypt, Jordan, Syria. The kinds of people now we're seeing in Hamas and Hezbollah, they're not particularly oriented towards compromise and deals. Israel needs to find the peace agreement while it's still there.
And Peggy, if you agree with Richard that at least the Bush administration policy is characterizable as inactive, what do you think the result of that was, and how now do we engage? This is never ending, what's happening here. The rockets are not being stopped by the unbelievable violence and carnage being leveled upon the Palestinians.
Guys, I got to tell you, I think in Washington, everywhere in the Mideast, the impulse has been to martial, M-A-R-T-I-A-L, across the board. The past 8 years or so. Let me tell you, when I was in Israel about 1.5 years ago, one of the things I sensed so strongly is that they were born in war in 1948, and they always expect a sense of being embattled in Israel, and they always expect it's going to turn out okay. In an odd way, even though embattled, it always turns out okay. They're always all right. They always endure. That's good, but it can almost undercut the feeling people need to have to say, hey, you know what, I would like to be embattled, I want to be more secure, and maybe we won't be safe in the future. I would like a greater... I'm sorry, guys, I'm getting old, and I'm for all peaceniks. I'm for all peaceniks everywhere. I would hold a sign saying, peaceniks for peace. I'm sorry. I would like everybody to back off and be less martial and less eager to take recourse to arms, and less eager to think this battle will solve it. Why in my lifetime has this battle never solved it?
I don't add, how do you add anything to what Peggy Noonan has said, but if I can add right quick, I agree with Peggy. I'm all for peace, too. I think that the way to get to peace, though, is justice. One of the things we learned, certainly out of our community, is that peace and justice go hand in hand. And I don't think you have peace unless you have justice. Dr. King, whose holiday we'll celebrate in a few days, Peggy, said injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere.
The martial attitude.
So there's got to be a conversation about justice in that region, and that means fairness. And without a conversation about justice, you don't get to peace.
Richard,
the Council on Foreign Relations is smiling over here.
What I want you to do, Richard, you give the answer. While you do that, we're going to hand flowers out to all of our guests here. It's like San Francisco, 1967. This is the summer of love revisited. Do you agree? Give peace a chance, Richard Haas.
You need to be tough so people understand they can't shoot their way to power, and though you also need to be flexible. And what the Israelis have been is tough. What we now need to see is flexibility backed by the United States.
All I can say, Peggy, is the Gipper, he'd be disappointed.
He spent years after being shot. I'm very serious about this, writing letters to Brezhnev saying, can't we have peace?
But what did the
Gipper was a peace conservative.
But what did he do then?
Okay? He didn't run around invading countries unless, unfortunately, now and then he had to.
I need you to answer this. You're playing peace.
He was truthful. He used words. He marshaled words to change the world.
Okay.
This was not a guy walking around saying, I've got a gun, you'll be Democratic or you're dead.
Okay, Peggy,
that was not the Gipper.
Stop this hippie talk and listen to me for a second.
Baby.
Let me tell you what the Gipper was. Suck it to me, Peggy. Let me tell you what the Gipper did, though.
Gipper, I know the Gipper. Go ahead.
The Gipper, apparently not. It sounds like you know.
Oh, no, she knows him.
I talked to him about what he was going to say to change the world.
Okay, really quickly, though. Let's talk about policy, though. Pershing II missiles, cruise missiles, deployed to Western Europe.
Absolutely.
All of Europe exploded. And you know what? They got into the streets, millions of them. They said, this guy wanted to start World War III. Hold on, I've got more.
Yes.
After he was assassinated, what did Ronald Reagan call those cruise missiles? The peacekeepers. People said it was the most perverse, grotesque thing, and he said peace through strength. You can talk about all of his weapon systems. You can talk about him not walking away from Reykjavik.
Absolutely.
And so why
he deployed those missiles, Joe. He didn't fire those missiles. He didn't fire those missiles. Europe asked for those missiles. They had to have them. The Soviets were moving and doing their missiles. Reagan hated this. He hated mutually assured destruction.
Necessary.
He did whatever he could to be a visionary and get rid of the power of the missiles. That's what Star Wars was about. He didn't want us all fighting. A real conservative accepts the imperfection of life and attempts to summon peace as best we can.
Right, and a real conservative understands there are evil people out there.
Absolutely.
And there are good people out there.
And sometimes you have to stop them.
Unlike George W. Bush's second inaugural address, sometimes it's not all sweetness and light. You can't, because George Bush said,
I don't know what you mean.
George Bush said, we're going to change human nature.
Oh, I know. He was going to outlaw tyranny.
Heaven, heaven can be made here. He sounded as utopian there as you do here.
No. That was aggressive. Yeah, that was a kind of aggressively dreamy utopianism. It is the last thing a conservative would be.
Right.
But a conservative loves peace.
Okay, Richard, last word, please.
Peace through strength.
No, peace through strength is good.
Because seriously, people look at the pictures. It breaks their heart.
They see the bloodshed.
But at the same time, what does Israel do?
But that is the lesson of Northern Ireland. You got to show strength, which the British did with their presence. At the same time, you've got to give people a diplomatic path. The problem for the Middle East, the diplomatic path does not be articulated. We've got to give the moderates in the Palestinian world an argument why they should choose talking over fighting. And until we do that, we're going to have more of this.
Richard, you were, just for everybody watching, weren't you the guy that masterminded the peace in Northern Ireland?
It's a bit generous, but I represented us for 3 years in that process.
The envoy. That remains one of the most remarkable things. I took my children to London and Harrods a couple of years ago, and I was just thinking, God, it wasn't too long ago that every Christmas we saw bombings there. Now there's peace in Israel.
Yeah.
I mean, in Ireland.
Northern Ireland.
Peace
It's
in
beautiful.
Peace in Northern Ireland, and you know what? We heard that crisis couldn't be solved.
But that's gets back to what Peggy was saying. It's that combination. You can't have a one-dimensional foreign policy. It's got to be guns, yes, but also diplomacy.
Thank you. Thank you, Richard Haas.
Thank you, Richard Haas.
I agree with Richard. I'm just trying to keep you in the middle of the road, Peggy. Conservatives are having enough trouble.
Conservatives love
Peggy, you
peace.
stay.
We accept the fact
We
of
need
evil,
you.
and it must be resisted, but we love peace. Let's not forget.
Everybody's
right.
talking about bagism, shagism, dragism, flagism, thisism, thatism, ism.